So, just a quick story about my first time renting a skid steer. So, I had to do some work around my yard. Figured I could probably do it cheaper if I did it myself versus hiring somebody for thousands of dollars to scrape down a little area and put some base materials down. So, I ended up renting a skid steer out of my local, equipment rental place. And it was kind of weird. They set everything up, and then there was something going on the weekend that I rented it, some like kind of event for the owner's son. And so Friday, they were like, typically I would get it Saturday, but they're like, well, we're going to drop it off on Friday, which I'm like, oh, great, I can get a jump start on this. So the weekend that I got it dropped off, though, I mean, we got hit with so much rain that week before. It was so bad because the area that I'm working in is muddy. It was so bad that I was considering canceling the equipment rental, but I had already done the deposit and I figured they probably wouldn't give that to me back. So I'm like, you know what, it's fine. The thing is a skid steer. It's got those like the tracks on it, so it should be fine. So they were like, yeah, we're going to drop it off Friday after work. So I'm like, all right. So Friday, it's raining. It's not heavily raining, but it's definitely raining. And I'm outside and I'm dawdling around doing some stuff, getting the area prepped. I'm waiting for them to drop it off. It's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I ended up calling and I said, hey, just out of curiosity, like, are you dropping this thing off? And they're like, yeah, we're just waiting for the guy to get out of work. Okay, fine. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rolls around. The skid steer is not in my yard. So I'm like, this is weird. I call back, they're closed, obviously. So I'm like, maybe they're just going to drop it off the next morning, whatever. So at this point, I'm a little bit irritated because I thought I was going to get an extra day, but I also only just paid for the Saturday and Sunday. I mean, you pay by the hour, so I'm like, that's fine. So the next morning I wake up, Saturday morning, and it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and there's no skid steer in my driveway. So I call, the place is closed. It's closed for the weekend because they have this event. So now I'm getting a little bit anxious and I can't figure out what's going on. So 10 o'clock rolls around and I get a call from the owner of the company. And he said that somebody posted on Facebook that they had a skid steer delivered to them in their driveway and they didn't know who it belonged to. So he goes, it's your neighbor. Go and grab it. And I'm like, my neighbor. Now I have a neighbor that's very close and then one that's a little bit like further away. So I'm like, I can see my neighbor's driveway. I know it's not the one that is really close. So I'm like, okay. So I go, it's not there either. I go on the other side of that neighbor. It's not there. So now, Saturday morning, I am running between all of my close neighbors' houses saying, hey, just out of curiosity, do you happen to have like a skid steer in your driveway that got dropped off randomly? So you'd think that I'd be able to see this from the road, but a lot of the houses and driveways are set back. So it's not something that I would notice until I go in, and I don't know where they would have delivered it in some of these places, because if it was delivered in my yard, you wouldn't be able to see it from the driveway or the main street. So finally, I figured out who it was. The skid steer is parked next to this like $70,000 truck, and I'm like, you want to like move the truck? Because I don't know how to drive this thing. So I get in it and I'm looking and she's like, yeah, it's really weird. They didn't leave a key. And I'm like, okay. So I'm looking around, looking everywhere, and I'm like, no key. So I call up the owner and I said, how do I even get this thing started? It doesn't look like it was left with a key. And the owner says, no, you just need to like shut the door, lock it, put the safety brace down, and then press a button and it turns on. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. And you don't need like a fob or anything like that. So I get the machine turned on. Cool. And then I'm YouTubing how to use this thing, and I am sweating bullets because one wrong move and the bucket is going to tear into this $75,000 truck none of this is on my property. Not to mention, I mean, the lady had like no anxiety about having me jump in and like move this machine. And I'm like, lady, I'm like super anxious. I don't know how to use this thing. Like it's parked next to your garage. I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I go to move it. All right. And I like go to back it up and it goes, oh, cha-ching. I'm like, this thing like touchy. Yeah. So it's got like a joystick and then I can't figure out how to move the bucket because it's not how I thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm learning all this in her driveway and I don't know what I'm doing. And she clearly just doesn't seem to care. So I ended up getting it out of the driveway and then I have to go on the main road. So I get on the main road and this thing is just chugging along. I mean, it is jarring me all over the place. Like every time I push it, it goes forward and then I let up and the thing stops immediately. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I finally get it home and I get to working. I worked for about 45 minutes and I get this sucker stuck. Like stuck. So I'm like, great. I got nothing done that I wanted to get done with it. So I get my truck. It's a 2500 HD. I'm like, I'll just hook it up with a chain and see if I can just move it a little bit. Yeah, this thing is like a 15,000 pound machine. Although small looking, it would not budge, would not budge. So I sit around for a few minutes. I call a tow truck. So they end up sending down the biggest freaking tow truck I've ever seen in my entire life. This thing is like something that you would see on site at a construction company. I mean, the thing dwarfed my house. It was just incredibly large. So they have this like tow line. So they take the tow line and they walk it all the way out, maybe like 500 yards to where the machine is. They set it up in the driveway. They use this tow line. They hook it up to the machine and he presses a button and just plucks it right out. Cool. Awesome. $800 bill. I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, I get the bill after. It was $800 for about 15 minutes. The rental of the machine was less money than that for the weekend. So I'm like, all right, well, at this point, it's going to be an expensive rental, but at least I'll still get done what I need to get done, and it's still going to be cheaper than hiring somebody else to do it. So I start working, and I'm 2 hours in. I get everything scraped down. I'm just about to do materials. I get my first load, pull that out with the skid steer, drop it down, get my second load. The freaking thing gets stuck again. I'm like, I've used this machine for a total of 3 hours. I've used it so little that it didn't even drop a bar in the gas, okay? And I'm like, screw it. At this point, I got most of the heavy lifting done. I'm going to just do the rest by hand. Monday morning comes around and he knows it's stuck. I made him aware, just let him know where it was. And I said, call me if you have any questions. So I hear nothing Monday morning. Monday at noon, I look at my email and I have this contract, this rental contract that they were supposed to send me before I took the machine. And I'm getting asked to sign it. And I'm like, that's weird. What happened? Do they have the machine? What's the deal? So I call them up and I said, hey, what's going on? Yeah, they sent me the rental contract because they forgot to send it when I initially rented the machine, that they dropped off at the wrong house, that they didn't seem to care where it went, because they were planning on charging me double what the cost was, so another $1,600 because they had to get it unstuck and then they had to clean it. Everything worked out in the end. They didn't have a contract signed. And honestly, I should have just told them if you called a tow truck company, it would have been half the price of what you were trying to charge me for your guys. I should just learn to stop doing things myself.